Good afternoon once again to the members of the media. Welcome to Public Protector House, and I would like once more to apologize for the delay. Our planning was affected by the fact that the Public Protector was not feeling well this morning, but she's feeling much better now. That's the reason you're seeing here to address you. My name is Halalelo Masibi and I'm the spokesperson. I will be chairing this afternoon's media briefing session. On the panel, we will be joined by the Deputy Public Protector, who is busy in the room next door with mediation. And as usual, after the Public Protector has addressed you, we will give you the opportunity to ask questions. And as we always do, before you ask questions, you will identify yourself by name and the media house that you represent and ask the question, and the Public Protector will then respond. We will avail the copies of the reports that the Public Protector is releasing during the course of the media briefing. And those that would like us to save the reports onto their memory sticks, you are welcome to give them to my colleague, Mr. Obasekhalo. On that note, I will introduce the Public Protector, Advocate Thuli Madonsela, to address you.
Good afternoon. I sincerely apologize. We are here to issue our first reports in the new financial year that started on the 1st of April. Scheduled to release 3. We are only releasing 2. The third one we have deferred it. All of the reports we are releasing today are about complaints regarding abuse or misuse of public resources for political electoral purposes. They also relate to allegations of failure to separate state and party. Thank you. And what the complainants have referred to as conflation of state and party. The European Commission for Democracy through Law, known as the Venice Commission, issued in 2013 a report titled Report on Misuse of Administrative Resources During Electoral Processes. In that report, the Venice Commission said the following, quote, "The misuse of public resources is widely recognized as the unlawful behavior of civil servants, incumbent political candidates, and parties to use their official positions or connections to government institutions aimed at influencing the outcome of elections." State and party colors is my report as the Public Protector, issued in terms of Section 182 1B of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa 1996 and Section 81 of the Public Protector Act of 1994. The report communicates my findings and remedial action I'm taking in terms of Section 182(1)(c) of the Constitution, following an allegation into alleged abuse of state resources to advance the African National Congress election campaign during the 2011 municipal elections, and the allegation of conflation of state and party through activities of a program known as Operation Hlasela, launched on 28 July by Mr. R. Jankelson, member of the Provincial Legislature for the Democratic Alliance in the Free State Provincial Legislature. Subsequent to the complaint lodged by the Honorable Jankelson, other complaints were lodged on the same matter, including one by the Congress of the People's representative, Mr. M.C. Makitane. The other complaints were lodged by ordinary members of the public during the public protector stakeholder consultation dialogues from 2012 onwards. These new complaints went further to allege improprieties beyond the conflation of state and party. Their allegations included corruption in the award of tenders and other contracts under the Operation Hlasela program. This report confines itself to alleged use or abuse of state resources to advance a party electoral campaign under the Operation Hlasela and related activities. It also addresses the allegation of conflation of state and party. The main allegation was the following, or rather the main allegation had the following components. A. Operation Hlasela is a Free State provincial government program marketed by the Free State Premier as such. B. Large amounts of money are invested into the program by numerous government departments. C. The Premier, Mr. Mahashula, was praised by the President, Mr. Zuma, for the government program. D. Operation Hlasela is merely an ANC election campaign under the pretext of provincial government departments' campaigns and programs. E. A truck drove around with photographs of Mr. President Zuma and Premier Mahashula and a message saying vote ANC and Hlasela on it. And he provided some photographs on this matter. This amounts to abuse of state resources for party political purposes and conflation of state and party. On analysis of the complaints and information already in the public domain on the matter, the issues investigated were the following. A. Did the Free State government abuse state resources to advance the African National Congress election campaign during the 2012 municipal elections? Did the Free State government implement Operation Hlasela in a manner that amounts to conflation of state and party? C. Was any person or political party prejudiced by the conduct in question? The investigation process was conducted through correspondence with relevant with relevant parties, meetings and interviews with the complainant and relevant officials of the department, as well as the sourcing and analysis of all relevant documents. All relevant laws, policies, and related prescripts were considered for the purposes of establishing the standard that was expected with regard to the conduct of the Free State government in the circumstances in question. Key laws and policies taken into account to determine if there had been any abuse of state resources to advance a party's electoral campaign and conflation of state and party as alleged were principally those setting the standard that should have been upheld by public functionaries in the Free State government regarding proper use of public resources, and those relating to the requirements of a free and fair election. I took into account that the conduct of the Premier of the Free State in respect of Operation Hlasela had to comply with Section 136 of the Constitution, which prescribes minimum ethical standards for members of the executive. Section 136 in particular prohibits acting in any way that is inconsistent with the office or exposing yourself as a member of the executive to any situation involving the risk of a conflict between your official responsibilities and private interests. Just a moment. Thank you. I further took into account Section 195 of the Constitution, setting out basic principles of public administration that all public functionaries, regardless of designation, have to comply with, and which accordingly should have been complied with in the conceptualization and execution of Operation Hlasela. Of particular relevance to the allegation of abuse of state resources for political party electioneering is Section 195, requiring public administration to be governed by democratic values and principles enshrined in the Constitution, in particular effective and economic use of resources. It also requires that services should be provided fairly, impartially, and responsibly. Given that the context of electoral fairness, given the fact that the complaint was in the context of electoral fairness, the conduct of the Free State government also had to be scrutinized for compliance with electoral laws and related prescripts aimed at ensuring fair play, including the Electoral Code of Conduct. For example, prior to elections, parties signed the Electoral Code of Conduct, which is provided for in Schedule 2 of the Electoral Act 73 of 1998. The Code of Conduct requires parties to adhere to certain standards of behavior, specifically during the campaigning period. Ultimately, the Code of Conduct forbids any political party or person from misusing a position of power or influence to alter the regulation or end result of an election. With South Africa being a signatory to applicable international instruments seeking to ensure democratic elections, including ensuring equality of opportunities for all electoral candidates and electoral parties, it is my considered view that the conduct of the Free State government had to comply with the objectives and spirit of the international standard setting frameworks regarding free and fair elections, with particular emphasis on the prevention of misuse of public power and resources by any person or party to gain electoral advantage and or to induce voters to act in a particular way. In this regard, Article 25 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, provides, among others, the following. I quote, persons entitled to vote must be free to vote for any candidate for election and for or against any proposal submitted to a referendum or plebiscite, and free to support or to oppose government without undue influence or coercion of any kind which may distort or inhibit the free expression of the elector's will. Voters should be able to form opinions independently, free of violence or threat of violence, compulsion, inducement, or manipulative interference of any kind. Of course, the part that is important in the circumstances is the part that talks to inducement and influence of the voters using the state opportunities. By the time the investigation commenced, it was common cause that the Free State government was implementing a program referred to as Operation Hlasela, which was widely referred in the speeches of Premier S. Magashule and others, as well as advertised in the Free State government's website, newsletter, and other communication avenues, as a vehicle aimed at accelerating service delivery, particularly with a view to combating poverty and enhancing housing service delivery. For example, in his speech to the Zion Christian Church Mass Prayer in Bloemfontein, 19th March 2011, Premier Magashule said the following. In our State of the Province address 2 weeks ago, we reported on the progress we're making to improve the living conditions of our people through our new service delivery strategy dubbed Operation Hlasela. Operation Hlasela is our new strategy that puts the poor at the center of key development interventions. We launched Operation Hlasela shortly after we took office in 2009 to improve and fast-track service delivery. Operation Hlasela is a clarion call to all our social partners and civil society to collaborate with government and to jointly and urgently eliminate application wastage and eradicate poverty, to tackle underdevelopment and to stimulate our economy to improve the lives of our people. Rihlasela Bufona, I don't want to insult you. I think I'm gonna skip the Sotho part with your permission. The Premier continued to say the following after saying a few things in Sesotho. We call on the Church to partner with us as we attack poverty and fight criminal elements in our society. Operation Hlasela offers an opportunity to work together with our social partners to bring about real concrete change in the lives of our people. Through Operation Hlasela, we are working with the private sector. For example, we have launched a program with the Netcare Group, which operates the largest private hospital in South Africa. He also proceeds to say the following at the end of the statement. Operation Hlasela is the concrete manifestation that this ANC-led government is truly a caring government which responds faster to the needs of the poor and the vulnerable in our society. The Free State branch of the ANC had also communicated about Operation Hlasela, including through a statement issued by the then ANC Provincial Secretary Sibongile Besani on 17 February 2011, which stated, among other things, that, quote, Operation Hlasela is a government program that has embraced the ANC 2000 election manifesto, close quote. She proceeded to say, Operation Hlasela articulates our manifesto in the best way understood and accepted by Free Staters. As you can see, both government and the ANC communicated about Operation Hlasela at different times. What would be clear there is that there was no distinguishing that there were two Operation Hlaselas. At the commencement of the investigation, I had a meeting with Premier Ace Magashule at his instance. This meeting, which took place on the 28th of October 2011, sought to discuss the nature and funding of Operation Hlasela. Premier Magashule clarified during that meeting that there were two programs using the name Operation Hlasela. He explained that one was a government service delivery vehicle, while the other was a private initiative seeking to reinforce government efforts primarily aimed at housing delivery. He conceded that the logos and colors of the two Operation Hlaselas were the same, resulting in confusion. He accepted that this was improper and accepted advice to change the name of one of the programs. Soon thereafter, the private initiative was changed to Friends of the Free State, while the government program retained the name Operation Hlasela. I'm grateful for the cooperation of Premier Magashule and the steps taken to remedy the problem we both identified at the commencement of the investigation. Thirdly, in the response to the notice served on Premier Magashule on the basis of Section 79 of the Public Protector Act, advising him of evidence implicating him as Premier and the government of the Free State regarding improper conduct relating to Operation Hlasela, Premier then denied any wrongdoing regarding Operation Hlasela and specifically denied that the ANC got any advantage from the Hlasela, from the private Hlasela program, or that there was conflated branding of Hlasela. I must indicate, though, that I have since spoken again to the Premier, and he is accepting that there was then a conflation of state and party, and that it was fixed. It was fixed after we had the discussion and agreed that we can't have the two programs operating as if they were one. Premier had never denied that the Hlasela name had at the time been used for both the private ANC endorsing Hlasela and the official program of the government of the Free State, or that a Hlasela branded truck with his and President Zuma's photographs and a message saying vote ANC was driving around during the 2011 local government elections. While the Premier made a valid point that the government of the day has a right to take whatever lawful action it deems necessary to expedite service delivery, it is inevitable that progress made by the government of the day regarding service delivery will be attributable to the governing political party. His contention that the ANC could not be legitimately said to have benefited from the conflated Hlasela branding was, in my considered view, rather naive. I must just indicate, though, that we wrote this part of the report, or I wrote this part of the report, before we had the final discussion where the Premier conceded that he's sticking by the original concession he had made, that at the time there was a conflation of the two brands. Having considered the evidence uncovered during the investigation and the Free State government submissions against the relevant regulatory framework, I make the following findings. Regarding whether the Free State government abused state resources to advance the African National Congress's election campaign during the 2011 municipal elections, I find that there's no conclusive evidence showing abuse or misuse of state resources to advance the ANC's electoral campaign during the 2011 local government elections. B. Evidence reveals that at the time the complaint arose, there were two Hlasela initiatives, one called Operation Hlasela, which was an official vehicle, a service delivery vehicle of the Free State government, driven by the Premier. The second Hlasela was a private Hlasela fund funded by private individuals, including civil servants and civil society entities, to support the state Hlasela initiative. As I've indicated, based on the advice I gave, the private Hlasela fund was renamed Friends of the Free State, and also brands its programs as Friends of the Poor. See, the private Hlasela initiative openly endorsed the ANC's electoral campaign and had a truck driving around during elections saying vote ANC during the 2011 local government elections. D. Although no state funds were used for the private Hlasela initiative, state platforms and communications channels were used to advertise and load Operation Hlasela without distinguishing between the government's Operation Hlasela and the ANC manifesto endorsing private Hlasela fund, whose benefit to the ANC in terms of free publicity and skewed implications for electoral fair play cannot be reasonably denied. E. Regardless of intention, the undermining of fair play in the electoral process was inconsistent with Schedule 2 of the Electoral Act, Section 136 of the Constitution, Section 195 of the Constitution, and the spirit of Article 17 of the African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Governance, and Article 25 of the ICCPR regarding whether or not the Free State government implemented Operation Hlasela in a manner that amounts to conflation of state and party. I find that the allegation of conflation of party and state is substantiated, regardless of intentions, and separate ownership as well as separate sourcing of funding for the two Hlaselas. The branding and marketing of the two was indistinguishable, and the two were marketed and loaded in government platforms. The arrangement not only confused the public, regardless of what activities are government sanctioned and funded and which ones are privately sponsored. Government itself used state communication resources to promote and praise both without always distinguishing between the two. D. Until the two Hlaselas were distinguished in terms of their names, the private initiative cannot be said to have not benefited from the shared branding and the free advertising of the government's Operation Hlasela at state expense. Again, regardless of intention, I cannot help but conclude that the undermining of fair play in the electoral process was inconsistent with Schedule 2 of the Electoral Act, Section 136 and Section 195 of the Constitution, as well as the spirit of Article 17 of the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, and Article 25 of the ICCPR. Regarding whether any person or political party was prejudiced by the conduct in question, I find that A. Other political parties and independent candidates were indeed prejudiced. B. Although I have no reason to doubt the good intentions of Premier Magashule and the Free State government regarding the purpose behind the two Hlaselas being to accelerate service delivery, the arrangement which allowed the use of government platforms to promote the ANC manifesto endorsing private Hlasela Fund did provide free advertisement for the ANC, which was not provided to other parties and independent candidates, and accordingly undermined equal access to advertising and other communications channels, thus compromising fair play between the ANC and other parties. Having noted that the private Hlasela Fund has since been renamed, thus eliminating the confused branding, the remedial action I am taking in terms of Section 182(1)(c) of the Constitution is the following. A, the Premier is to ensure that a provincial policy is developed and circulated in all government institutions within the province, setting out a clear separation between state and party activities at all times, and that all provincial state functionaries are made aware of this policy. The Premier is also to ensure that no government platform or state functionary is required or allowed to use their position, power, and public resources under their control to market political party matters. That is all that is being proposed, or rather, that is all that I have determined is appropriate for the Premier regarding the separation of state and party under Hlasela. Just to confirm once more, the investigation into the Hlasela initiative, Operation Hlasela, does not end with the conflation of state and party or alleged abuse of public resources for party electioneering purposes. It also includes alleged tender irregularities, as I indicated earlier. We are busy finalizing that part of the investigation. Section 79 notices were issued exactly at the same time as this one. However, it's taking us a little bit longer to tighten up the tender issues and other contracts. Thank you. The second report, I will not read all of it. I am just going to summarize. I'm just going to summarize what the report is about. It is also about conflation of state and party. This one is about alleged maladministration by the Department of Social Development and the South African Social Security Agency, SASSA, regarding the distribution of food parcels and the SASSA grant by then President of the African National Congress Youth League, ANC Youth League, at Heinz Park in Philippi in Cape Town in December 2009. It was a long time ago, and we apologize that it's coming back now. Part of the problem is investigators leaving, and with our investigators being busy with other investigations, often an old investigation is left unattended. However, people still want to know how it was concluded. The basic principles are the same. The main principle that we have applied really is the provision in Article 17 of the ICCPR, where it is said that the elections should really be won in a free and fair way, that no inducement or any other conduct should be used to influence elections. Specifically, Article 25, I'm sorry I said Article 17. It's Article 17 of the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, and Article 25 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. I did read it earlier, but just to remind us, it says persons entitled to vote must be free to vote for any candidate for election and for or against any proposal submitted to a referendum or plebiscite, and free to support or to oppose government without undue influence or coercion of any kind which may distort or inhibit the free expression of the elector's will. Voters should be able to form opinions independently, free of violence or threat of violence, compulsion, inducement, or manipulative interference of any kind. Close quote. This complaint was lodged by the DA's Shadow Minister of Social Development, Ms. Patricia Kopane, who alleged that there was distribution of food parcels by Mr. Malema at a SASA event when Mr. Malema was the president of the ANC Youth League, which is the youth league of the governing party, the African National Congress, or ANC. In evaluating whether there was any impropriety by SASA or the Department of Social Development in allowing the president of the ANC Youth League to distribute SASA provided food parcels, we checked the conduct against the Public Protector Act, particularly Section 6, subsection 4, the Executive Ethics Code, particularly insofar as it prohibits conflict of interest, and again consideration was given to Section 195 of the Constitution. Again, in view of the matter having a bearing on electoral equality and also dealing with the conflation of state and party, consideration was taken again of the international instruments that are applicable, which are the two that I've just mentioned. The matter was investigated, and just roughly the findings are the following. Before I go to the findings, it was what were the issues. It was whether the event was indeed organized by SASA as alleged, and if the president of the ANC Youth League did distribute the SASA food parcels. The second issue was whether SASA improperly authorized the ANC Youth League president to distribute its food parcels and to pledge a 100,000 rand grant, SASA grant, to a certain Miss Rosie Klassen, and if such conduct amounts to conflation of state, of party and state. The third issue was whether or not the ANC Youth League's banners were displayed alongside each other at the event. And lastly, we had to establish if it was true that Minister Edna Molewa instructed SASA officials to have food parcels organized for distribution at the event, and if that conduct amounted to abuse of state power and a violation of the Executive Members' Ethics Act. The findings in this particular investigations are the following. Regarding whether SASA organized the event and allowed Mr. Malema to distribute SASA purchased food parcels. My finding is that the allegation that SASA organized the event that was held at Hines Park in Philippi, Cape Town on 1 December 2009 is unsubstantiated. The event was organized by the ANC Youth League in terms of its own internal resolution and using its own resources. Regarding the distribution of SASA purchased food parcels, the finding also is no. The food parcels were not purchased by SASA, but they were obtained by SASA. Well, since they were obtained by SASA, we then took it that they were state food parcels because they were obtained by SASA. We also find, my finding is also that the president of the ANC Youth League, Mr. Malema, did distribute the food parcels at the event. Given the fact that the Public Protector makes findings in state affairs, it is important to understand that the conduct we were investigating was the conduct of SASA and the Department of Social Development. My findings are therefore that the conduct of SASA and its officials in distributing state food parcels at a political party event and allowing a leader of a political party who does not work for government to distribute such food parcels was inconsistent with the provisions of Section 195 of the Constitution, requiring the delivery of public services in a manner that is fair, professional, and non-discriminatory. The conduct accordingly constitute improper conduct as envisaged in Section 182 of the Constitution. Regarding the allegation that SASA authorized the ANC Youth League President, Mr. Malema, to distribute or to make a pledge of 100,000 rand with SASA money, my finding is that this is not substantiated. The pledge was made by Mr. Malema, but the money involved was not going to be government money. The pledge was made on behalf of the ANC Youth League with its own money. The third finding relates to displaying the banners of the ANC Youth League and SASA alongside each other. My finding is that this did happen and that it was improper. The conduct of SASA officials in allowing this to happen is inconsistent with Section 195 of the Constitution, which requires, again, professional, fair, and impartial service delivery. The conduct accordingly constitutes maladministration and ultimately improper conduct. The last one was if it was true that it was the minister who requested the food parcels to be sourced and distributed. Minister Edna Molewa, who's no longer the Minister of Social Development, did not deny that she caused the Social Development Department, or SASA, under the Social Development Department, to arrange for the food parcels and to have them distributed at that event. I think the defense that was used by the Department of Social Development was that the food parcels were not bought with government money. They were sourced through private agencies. My finding is that it was still improper because the food parcels were sourced under government and distributed at a party political event. And again, it violates the spirit of Section 195 of the Constitution, the spirit of Section 96 insofar as the ethical conduct of members of the executive, and cannot be said to be consistent with the provisions of Articles 17 of the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, as well as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Regarding remedial action, I've taken into account the lapse of time, and the remedial action I'm taking, therefore, is more forward-looking. It is really to ask the current Minister of Social Development to ensure that the Department of Social Development and the South African Social Security Agency develop and circulate in all internal units a policy that clearly sets out a clear separation between state and party activities at all times, and ensures that all state functionaries in the Department of Social Development and SASA are made aware of this policy. Secondly, I'm asking the current Minister of Social Development to ensure that no government platform or state functionary is required or allowed to use their position, power, and public resources under their control to market political party matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Public Protector. We have now come to the Q&A session, and by show of hands, we can start taking questions. I will take the two hands on the left-hand side. My colleague will bring the Ruby mic to you. Is there someone from the right-hand side who'd like to ask questions? No questions. All right.
Hi, Philip Debate from the Mail and Guardian PB. Could you tell us about that third report, please? I didn't catch what you were saying about the reason for the delay, about the third report. And also, can you confirm to us that the third report is regarding the 2014 provincial government advertisements by the Gauteng province, please?
Thank you. Colin Nambi from ENCA. Public Protector, just to be clear, regarding the Operation Hlasela report, can you say without doubt in your mind that there was never an abuse use of state resources to advance the ANC election campaign in 2001. 2009. 2011.
We can take more questions if there are any.
I can answer this too quickly.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I'll start with these ones to dispense with them very quickly. Good morning, Mr. Devert. The delay is we had to withdraw it because there are some issues that arose when there was a response to the Section 79 notice that we have to iron out before we can finalize. As you know, it has been said now that we can be taken on review, and the most important part for us is self-review, just making sure that when evidence is contested, then we double verify it. And the report is not the Gauteng one, it's a food parcels one. All of the reports we wanted to release were food parcels. Tlokwe was also on its way, but there was still a bit of work to be done for food parcel. Mr. Nkambi, can I say without doubt, sir? No, I cannot. That's why I didn't say there was no use of state resources. I said there's inconclusive evidence. Didn't I say that? I think I said that. Because again, for us to tie it up and say there was use of resources, we've got to say that there was abuse by the political party of state resources. At this stage, because there were two Operation Hlasela's, the government would just talk about what it's doing with Operation Hlasela without necessarily saying which one is it. Secondly, the two were often mentioned as supporting each other without realizing that advertising the other was now a problem because the other Hlasela was endorsing a political party. For example, if there was Operation Hlasela government and the private Operation Hlasela had nothing to do with the governing party and was not endorsing any electoral process, there wouldn't have been too much problem about having a program that is in government with a name and it's supported by a civil society initiative with a similar name. The only problem was the involvement of a political party and a very clear endorsement of the electoral campaign of that electoral party. Thank you.
We just wanted to know, when do you think the second part of this report is gonna come out, especially because this investigation has been taking quite a while?
Joe Tupana from the SABC. Public Protector, I realized that when you came up with remedial actions, there is no time frame set up for this. In light of the local government election, talking about the premium of the first aid, also about SASA, why there is no time frame for this process that need to be developed that possibly can give a point to this whole thing that the state could continue?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kathy Hlahla. Oh, all right. No, thank you. DVP is already answering because in the main report there is an answer, but we're giving you an executive summary. But thank you, Deputy Health Protector. Starting with the first question from Ms. How long you would like to know when can we expect the final Hlasela report? In a month's time, because it is complete. It is just a question of finishing touches. I don't want to say next week. If I were to ask the Free State team that's helping, they'll put up their hands and say we can do it within a week's time, but we're talking about the ultimate. In other words, we will still issue the report in this month in May. It's a question of which day in this month. In fact, we'll issue all of the ones that are outstanding in relation to state and party before the end of May, because the political parties themselves wouldn't want us to issue a report right in the middle of the electoral process. We're also mindful of that particular process. Mr. Tupana, you asked why we didn't give timelines. The Deputy Public Protector already whispered that we do have 1 month for them to provide us with an action plan, and 3 months to write the report or to write the policy. However, we will talk to the relevant organs of state to at least share the report with the people. In terms of the simple rules, we ourselves can find it easy to just indicate to them what should they not do. Like they can't endorse on a government platform. You can't endorse any political party. When a minister is in an event as a minister, not as a party representative, he or she cannot endorse a particular political party, and that applies to every public functionary. 2, you can't use a public communications platform such as your website or your newsletter to advertise or to promote a political party initiative. Those things are already in the report. From their side, they would later have to turn this into protector representative. Mr. Samuel is here from the Free State. Oh, he's still helping with something upstairs. We will make him available to the Free State government to assist with some preliminary document that can just tell people the do's and don'ts in terms of keeping the state as the state and the political party as the political parties.
Thank you, Public Protector. Are there further questions? Right, there's one in front, the other at the back. Philip Devet, I notice you. Any more? Thanks, we'll take those 2.
Thank you, Public Protector. Francis Loma, from Progressive Independent News Agency. From your findings, you said that the event was not organized. I'm talking about the SASA one. That it was not organized by the Department of Social Development.
Yes.
And also that the parcels were not purchased by SASA, but they were sourced by SASA. So if you check why did they source these food parcels for a private event or a political party event? Philip Levitt from the Mail and Guardian again. PB, can you direct remedial action at a political party? Would it be appropriate for you to direct your persuasive powers at a political party, or perhaps more pointedly, was it a conscious choice not to direct any of your findings at the party in question here?
Thanks. We didn't get your name, sir. The first one to ask the question. France.
Your surname?
France. Francella?
Machate.
Okay.
Mr. Machate, would you like to repeat your question, please?
Just more clarity.
I'm checking from their findings. You say the event was not organized by SASA, and the food parcels were not bought by SASA but sourced by SASA. So when you check, why did they source these food parcels for a private event, not a government event?
Thank you. Let's start there, Mr. Franz Sello. We did ask why the food parcels were sourced, and the ANC Youth League was also asked. We were provided with a document indicating that they'd met in November 2009 and a resolution was taken to combat poverty, and this was part of the ANC Youth League's poverty alleviation strategies. As to why SASA provided the assistance, their answer was the same, that since the ANC Youth League was going to give the food parcels to the poor, and SASA also tries to help the poor, there was a coincidence of interest. I have not addressed in this report our take on food parcels and their delivery. You will get that in the Tlokwe report, because there we confronted the minister properly about why on that particular day, what happens tomorrow, and things like that. On this particular one, because it was an old matter, we tried to finish it off without going towards backwards and forwards, and I apologize. But you're raising a very important question, which will be in that report, about the delivery of food parcels. At this stage, it was just for us focusing on what the ICCPR says, is that you can't use anything that is ingestment. And when you look at it, you look at ingestment as anything that would make the people who have to make a decision about who to elect decide in a particular way. And we thought, based on that, it is not ideal to do this. But we didn't question the ANC Youth League delivering food parcels on its own. We just said them being sourced by SASA for a political party branch, because the ANC Youth League would be a branch of a political party or a youth body of a political party. It's improper because that's government aiding a particular political party. Is that fair? That's not good enough. You just want to know, why did they provide the food?
No. The follow-up question will not be on that, but basically will then be: are you therefore saying you did not do thorough job on this, but then just did it just to finish with the report? Because that is the sense that I'm getting now from the response that you gave me, that you did not go into details, because the other question would then be, will they do the same if it was a different party? So
No, as I'm indicating, we've concluded that answer that SASSA can't source food parcels. That's why I've still made a finding that was improper. If you remember when I read the report, I said it doesn't matter that the food parcels were not purchased by SASSA. The fact that they were sourced by SASSA for a political party makes it improper. But once they come to the state, they become state property. Whether the state bought them or was given them, they are now state property. And when they were delivered on that day, they were state food parcels. That's about the thoroughness. It's the toing and froing about why on this particular day. We did ask those questions, and when we were not making headway, we let that path go, because in principle we're still going to deal with that, and we have now done interviews. We did interview the Minister of Social Development around the choice of days around these distributions. And we will have an authoritative statement soon then about about our views on why also that is questionable. And just maybe to end it, we're saying it can't be done. That's what the report has said, is that government cannot distribute food parcels at a political party event. However, it might not be a political party event. That's why the question will still arise in the other issue. In the one that we withdrew, for example, it wasn't at a political party event when things were distributed. The one we were going to release today, but something still was distributed.
I believe this brings us to the end of the briefing in the absence of further questions. And I will now give you the opportunity to do one-on-one interviews with the public protector. Thank you.
Went very well. Yes. Yeah, and I was just finishing an ADR next week. Very busy.